that you're being able to spend with family and friends during Ramadan is really of value, and you feel that you are creating a treasure for yourself with your family, inshallah, this Ramadan, and getting to know each other, chatting, talking, getting to sort of know each other's little difficulties and problems and concerns, so that you can be more supportive to each other. Ramadan is all about bringing families and friends back together, because we all are so busy during the year, and we tend to just get lost in the things that we do and the spaces that we occupy and so on and so forth. So it's a time of coming back. My name is Batool, and I spoke to you last week at this time. And this week I'm the founder director of the Convert Muslim Foundation. And this week I thought I would take a little time just to talk to you about the Convert Muslim Foundation, about where we started, why we started, and what we do as the Convert Muslim Foundation for the people that we established ourselves in the hope to help and support. So the Convert Muslim Foundation began about a year and a half ago. The reason why we decided to branch out and to start this independent organization was because we felt that, I felt, and a lot of my colleagues who we had a lot of discussions with around the whole issue of conversion to Islam and the convert community, we felt that the convert community was a growing, developing, and generic community that was really looking beyond the initial conversion or transition to Islam support requirements. As you all know, when somebody converts to Islam, they do need quite a lot of support, because as you could see from our program last week, which featured three guests actually, one who wasn't in the studio, and two who were, but who wrote, one of them who wrote about her experiences, and I read that out over the radio for your benefit. And the three people had come from three different backgrounds. Two were I think all of them were of Indian origin, or you could call them British Asian. All of them living in the UK. One who had converted to Islam while in India at the age of 14, from Catholicism to Islam. One who lived here in the UK, in Birmingham, who converted from Sikhism to Islam, and one who lived here in Leicester, who converted to Islam from Hinduism. And all of them discussed and talked about the difficulties they had. So if you think about those three people, and then you think about all other converts to Islam, who convert to Islam from a variety of different backgrounds, from African, Caribbean, West Indian background to Islam, from British English to Islam, from Eastern European countries, many of who live in the UK at the moment, from Albania to Hungary, Poland, Lithuania, all these countries who have come to the UK and who have, by some miracle, been introduced to Islam, whether that's through an individual Muslim or through some activity that they become involved in, possibly maybe through study, university, meeting Muslim friends, interacting with classmates and so on, and who have converted to Islam. All of these people go through a variety of different difficulties, challenges, and even traumas. in order to become Muslim. Personally, I converted to Islam when I was living in Ireland. I was working in Dublin. I happened to meet some Malaysian Muslims purely on a social basis. And they didn't talk to me about Islam. I just noticed there was something different about them, something unique. I was going to say strange, but then Islam is not strange. Well, maybe it is. We are told that we will be strangers in society because we are Muslim. But yes, something uniquely different about them. And it was only after meeting them, finding out a lot about where they were from, what they were doing in Ireland, most of who were studying at the Royal College of Surgeons in Dublin, or in Trinity College, or at least at some of the unique sort of educational facilities in Dublin, that I began to realize that there was something different about them in the way they behaved in particular. The way, the very respectful kind of relationships that they had with each other. And this was, they were students, men and women. There was no sort of segregation as such as we find here in the UK, which I found incredibly difficult to deal with when I came here. And obviously, I'm not sure whether you will agree with this, but I have determined that segregation is not part of Islam, but it's part of culture more than Islam. So it's a cultural imposition in many ways. And for them, they were very respectful towards each other, very respectful towards each other's unique situation, their family position, their as students, male and female, and so on and so forth. So that was something that struck me very significantly. And I guess I wouldn't have seen it if there was this strict segregation. I would not have seen that unique kind of interactive, respectful attitude and situation there. And then I began to notice how generous, how thoughtful they were, how lovely and warm-hearted they were. And so it was through that relationship and being invited to their homes and having meals together and so on that I began to think there is something uniquely different here. And then I requested that they share some of that information with me, which they did. And I began to realize that they were in possession of something that I had been looking for or searching for since I was probably in my mid-teens. As a Catholic, coming from a very lovely, united, supportive Catholic family with parents who were more Muslim, I would say, than most of the Muslims I know today, but they were still Catholic. So I was coming from a very stable position in my own life, but I was just very curious about Islam, very curious about what was, different to me from Catholicism, which I was becoming increasingly disappointed with and disillusioned with. So I'll just stop there and tell you that we're broadcasting from Radio Ramadan, 87.9 FM, and you're welcome to this program this morning from the Convert Muslim Foundation. Our number, if you'd like to call in, and I'd love to hear from you if you would like to call in, please don't feel that we're going to interrogate you if you do call in. This is just a chat, a warm, welcoming chat to talk about your journey if you're a Muslim, if you're a convert to Islam, or any other subject in relation to converts to Islam. And our number is 077488 55055. I'll read that again for you. It's 0774 88 55055. Again, we're on Radio Ramadan 87.9 FM. I'm sure that many of you will have dropped the children at school, and perhaps you're lying down and having a little bit of a rest after a very busy morning. So I've worked with converts to Islam pretty much all of my life since I became a Muslim, for about 27 or 28 years, looking at how to provide the basic support for converts to Islam. In other words, welcoming them into Islam, trying to find out what their needs are, providing them with Shahada certification, providing them with courses, maybe whatever courses they might need to build their Islamic knowledge and so on, and just generally looking after them and answering so many of their calls. Now, why did I do that? Well, when I came to Islam, of course, it upset my parents. Of course, they were completely devastated, because nobody, brings up their children and feels that they're going to step away from the values and the characteristics that they have tried to build within you. Good characters, character traits, good values, all of which are rooted within Islam as well as within other faiths. That's why we have so much in common between faiths. But to step away from what your parents have instilled in you is very hard for them. It's very difficult for them to swallow that bitter pill, because they feel that they have equipped you with all that you need in order to go out there and face the world. And of course they have. But, there's something inside each person, and perhaps it is a God-centered need to try to fulfill a spiritual desire that lingers within you. And maybe not quite so with other members of your family, some of whom might be interested in politics, some might be interested in ecology, some might be interested in the arts. Everybody's got different interests in life. But for some reason, you have been, your interest is steeped in, or is rooted in, spirituality and a desire to find a pathway to God that sits very comfortably with you in your heart, that makes you feel that this is the right path. And even though there might be one or two aspects of that path that don't maybe sit very comfortably in the initial stages, once you learn about them, once you read about them, once you educate yourself about these things, you realize why they are there. And then you come to the realization overall that Islam is a very rational faith. It's very easily understood and easily lived. And sometimes, it's about, there's a hadith that said, that the Prophet ﷺ said that if you have a difficulty in terms of a problem that you have within yourself, ask the sheikh within you, or ask the scholar within you, which is ask your heart. Because if your heart is uncomfortable or not at peace or racing around your chest, and not comfortable with the choice you've made, then it's most probably not the right choice. Because I think when you link yourself to Allah, when you become more God conscious about your your faith, about your life, about your lifestyle, about your everyday living, and where, you know, everything you do is rooted in the belief you have in Allah, in the where you are completely at one with God, then your whole body becomes aligned to that principle. And if there is something that is disturbing you because you feel it's not quite the right thing to do, then you follow that. It's like what we call, there's an old saying, you know, follow your gut instincts. So your gut is almost your first go-to place that inspires you as to whether what you're doing is right or it's wrong. And so you follow that. So, okay, so I became a Muslim, and I've been working with the converts and looking after their needs and trying to help them. And that doesn't just mean maybe when somebody comes into Islam. It means that, you know, a family member passes away. How am I going to deal with this? Whether that's a Muslim family member, through your marriage to a Muslim spouse, or whether it's a non-Muslim family member through your relationship with your own immediate family. There's a wedding coming up. How do I navigate myself through that and maintain my Islamic identity and, you know, follow the rules of Islam? And I don't. And notice I didn't say there follow the strict rules of Islam, because the rules within Islam are not strict. There's a hadith that said, "Yasiru wa la tu'asiru." Nafiru wa la tubashiru. So it's make things easy. Don't make them difficult. Speak nicely. Give people nice tidings rather than always coming down on people with the, you know, fire and brimstones. So it would be about, you know, how do we encourage converts to Islam to maintain relationships with their families without necessarily making things so difficult for them that the whole thing becomes so awkward, they might as well, you know, give up and go away. Spending Christmas with your family. And of course, we have a lot of people, Muslims, who come down on converts to Islam and tell them, no, you can't spend Christmas with your family because, you know, it's Christmas and it's a Christian celebration and, you know, it's not right. Okay, if I can spend any other day of the year with my family and I come away from my family and my Islam is not watered down or depleted in any way, because I have spent time with my family, then why should Christmas be any different? So you know, the reason why a lot of converts to Islam and a lot of people generally want to spend Christmas together is because, you know, as families, we are dispersed all over the country, all over the nation, sometimes all over the world. And Christmas is a time when family comes back together. Apart from the religious aspect of it, and all of that, this is a time for family to come together. And so it may be, for me in particular, having come from a family of 10 children, 4 boys and 6 girls, it's the time of the year that I can definitely guarantee that I will meet all of them together with their spouses, with their children, my nieces, nephews, my parents when they were alive, may Allah have mercy on them, and everybody. And so, you know, this is a time when we are able to get back together. So there may be issues to do with Christmas, you know, all sorts of other things. And so it's not just about the initial transition into Islam where people need to learn to pray, need to learn about the basics of Islam, need to be able to understand what is halal, and be able to know where to find certain things and so on, how to dress, how to interact with people, how to internalize the wonderful values within Islam and build on those lovely values that your parents brought you up in. Kind of not so much junk them, because, you know, we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, we want to just polish these things and, bring them up to a nice standard so that we are constantly aware of ourselves as Muslims and our relationship with Allah, and that we deal with people with all of this in mind. And so it came to the point where I felt that when we started our work with new Muslims, there was very little out there in terms of help and support for them all over the UK. And so I decided, we tried our best to establish all of these. And we contacted so many people around the country and helped them to establish their convert care provisions locally, so that we didn't have to really be in touch with people at such a distance. Yes, we could help them to some extent, but what they really needed was convert care groups in their own locality where they could go and talk about Islam, go to events locally, get involved with the community locally, because let's face it, that's where people generally, Muslims generally, and converts in particular, are going to find a comfortable space for themselves. And they're going to be able to get involved with the community and look for various activities within the community, social activities that are helpful not just to the Muslim community, but to society at large. And this was another problem that we found with converts to Islam. The Muslim community almost convinced them that now they were a Muslim, they really couldn't interact with society at large, that kind of interaction should be curtailed to the point where they felt that they couldn't really be part of bigger social change and social issues and so on. So in a sense, sometimes we had to reintroduce converts to Islam, to the social atmosphere here in the UK, and to convince them that, the work that they used to do maybe before they became a Muslim, with the homeless, with the people who were hungry and whatever was out there, with people on drugs, with alcoholism, with different things in the community, mental health problems, all sorts of things like that. These were the sort of things that, of course, we should get involved in again. Absolutely. There is absolutely no reason whatsoever, because, the Quran mentioned to us all of the time, "O you who believe, do this and do that, and, work for mankind." Not work for the Muslim community, but, show mankind what Islam is about in terms of the care and the services that you provide for the whole of society. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you establish these care and services within the Muslim community. They may well be already established outside the community, and it's about getting involved in these things. Let's not be reinventing wheels. And so we managed to get everybody, all these different little hubs in localities around the UK, in Manchester, in Leeds, in Edinburgh, in Glasgow, in Liverpool, in Birmingham, Peterborough, Nottingham, all these places, Leicester, all the way down the country. And having done that, then it was much easier for us to work, because we were able to point people who called us in the direction of their nearest local support network, which was fantastic. And so now we have all these support networks established across the UK, and all of them are working diligently to be able to provide convert care. Mosques are coming on board, but mosques are a different situation, because they're usually run by various groups from various different backgrounds around the world, around the UK and so on. And sometimes their governance or their approach to certain things in the mosque can be a little bit dry and prescriptive. And so converts to Islam often find mosques difficult spaces. And that has led to converts to Islam establishing third spaces, spaces in community centres, spaces in creating hubs all over the place, so that they can meet together and feel a kind of sense of comfort and ease in their own sort of understanding of Islam, in their own understanding of their own needs and difficulties. And this is what we call converts creating third spaces. And this has worked really well. And we'll talk about this after the break, and then we'll go into the Convert Muslim Foundation and why we established it, the importance of its work, and where we're going in the future. Thank you for listening. Assalamu alaikum. Done 87.9 FM. My name is Batool, and I'm speaking to you today from the Convert Muslim Foundation, and I hope that you're all tuning in and having a nice maybe rest this morning after the children have gone to school, and maybe just taking a little time out for yourselves. Our number this morning is 077 488 55055. I'll read that again. That's 077 488 55055. And this morning I've been talking about converts to Islam and my work with people who have converted to Islam for so many years now, maybe 3 decades, to be honest. And so now I wanted to move on to why did we set up the Convert Muslim Foundation? So we came together, some Muslims, and we decided that actually the convert Muslims had, we've developed, we've grown past the baby stage. We've learned how to walk. We've learned how to run, maybe not so well at the moment, but we've moved forward, and our community is growing and developing. And perhaps we needed to maybe up the ante here and see if we could look to the future and look at what we might need as a convert community in another maybe 10, 20, 30 years' time. Because, as Muslims, we always have to think about these things. We can never just work in the moment. We have to think about what it is we're doing and how that's going to impact on our communities, on our lives, way into the future. And any organization that's not doing that really is not fulfilling their duties to the Muslim community. So when you start an organization, you have to think into the future. You have to think about what it is our community may need way, way ahead of what we're doing right now. We decided to set up the Convert Muslim Foundation because we wanted to look at this developing community and what it would need in its maturity, maybe in another 10 years' time, in another 20 years' time. And so we decided that because all of these wonderful organizations working around the country in the various different cities, Manchester, Leeds, Sheffield, Bradford, so on and so forth, were doing such a great job locally, that we might start looking at national projects where we can improve the lives of Muslims. So let's just talk about one of our projects. I'll start with one of them. It's called Resettlement and Rehabilitation. And this is about prison. And I know that everybody will sort of recoil when they hear about working with prison. But, I have some things to tell you that may make you be really surprised, disappointed, concerned, and shocked. So there are probably about 90,000 prisoners in the whole of the UK, scattered around various different prisons. And we have one here in Leicester, we have some in Peterborough, we have London, Belmarsh, there are lots of prisons that you will hear a lot about. Wakefield, Leeds, Durham, lots of prisons all over the place. And you pass them by and you think, oh yeah, that's where people go when they've broken the law. Okay. And so we have about 90,000 prisoners, maybe more, maybe slightly more. I don't think definitely less, but definitely maybe more. 90,000 people out of a population of 65 possible million people is a lot of prisoners, a lot of people in prison. Now, if we appreciate or we acknowledge that we have between 3 and 4 million Muslims in the UK. And then we look at the fact that of that 80,000 prisoners across the whole of the UK, up to 15,000 of those prisoners are Muslim. Now that is that is a shame. That is a blight on our communities across the whole of the UK. 15,000 Muslim prisoners, that has to be shocking. And the other shocking thing is where the majority of those Muslim prisoners come from. Unfortunately, the majority are from Asian background, with a small number of them coming from the African, Caribbean, West Indian communities. I guess maybe we could also perhaps suggest that there are others who come in from other parts of the world, Muslims who get into difficulties and are also incarcerated in prisons. But also the interesting thing about this is that this work is not your nice, fluffy, work that people like to do or organizations like to get involved in, particularly Muslim organizations. And this is such a big shame on us as a community, that we have 15,000 prisoners, Muslim prisons, in our prisons all over the UK, and that so many of our Muslim organizations are failing to meet their needs. Now, of that 15,000, a third, and this is where my concern comes in, and this is where I feel that we have to work in this area. About a third, 29%, which we could say is maybe between 3,000 and 5,000 Muslim prisoners, are converts to Islam who have converted, for the most part, converted to Islam in prison while serving a sentence. Or they are maybe a very small amount of them who are converts to Islam who have been imprisoned for one reason or another. Now, I'm hoping this is as big a shock to you as it was to me. And because we are called the Convert Muslim Foundation, we cannot ignore this situation. And so one of our projects is about resettlement and rehabilitation. I had a meeting out at Markfield last October, just got it in there before Boris decided to ruin everything again and put us back into lockdown. Just slid in there just before he made the announcement after the weekend that he was locking down. Obviously, I couldn't have more than 30 people. And these 30 people came from all over the UK. They came from Bristol, Cardiff, London, Peterborough, Manchester, all over the north and so on. And of course, I had to be very careful due to lockdown reasons that I only had 30 people, that I was, making sure that they were socially distanced. We had all sorts of, hand sanitizers, posters about distancing and all that sort of thing up and everything. And we had to keep it completely monitored over the weekend for that, in case anyone walked in on us and decided that, we weren't following the rules and regulations. So it was very important that. However, we had this gathering of people, and they came from backgrounds of chaplaincy within prisons, organizations, a few, not very many, organizations who are working with prisoners and trying to provide reading material, Islamic artifacts and so on for prisoners while they're in prison and so on, and trying their best to maybe support them and help them when they come out. And other people who are doing research on this topic and so on. And it was a fantastic weekend. But I can tell you that there was one particular aspect of the weekend that was absolutely riveting beyond anything else that happened at the weekend. And just want to say something that might really sort of make you concerned, was we had a brother, is very well known around the UK. He is the Muslim advisor to the Ministry of Justice in relation to prisons. And he works with the Ministry of Justice trying to get Islamic services for Muslims in prison. And believe me, that is not an easy task. It's very difficult. Now, he made a statement at that conference, and I'm going to tell you now exactly what that statement was. He said, if the Muslim community do not realize their responsibilities in relation to all of this, the fact that there are so many Muslims in prison, he said, by 2050, the Muslim population within prisons all over the UK will be 50%. Now, can you believe that? There was a sharp intake of breath when he said this. This is so shocking. And so this is a problem that is becoming greater and greater and growing all the time. And really, as a community, we have to start looking at our youth facilities, as mosques. We have to start becoming more welcoming, more appreciative, more, more concerned in relation to our Muslim community about what's happening. And it's about prevention is better than cure. It's about being knowledgeable about these statistics. And I'm very happy to speak to anybody who wants to know about the actual statistics about Muslims in prisons all over the UK, so that we really educate ourselves about this. And so during that weekend, we had a little malfunction on the Saturday night where we couldn't relay a program through the channels, the proper channels, and our technology just completely failed us. And among the people at that meeting were three young men, not old, maybe one or two were sort of, we could say maybe mid to late 30s. One of them early 30s, and so on. And they had come as people who had been in prison and served time in prison. And one of the things we decided that weekend is that we no longer wanted to refer to people who have come out of prison as ex-prisoners or ex-offenders or ex-anything. Because they're not ex-anything. They have gone into prison. They have served their sentence. They have done their time. They have repented. They have, they have recovered from that sort of lifestyle that they had. And they've come out wanting the support, needing the support to guide them into stable, futuristic positions so that they can become serving members of the community. So we no longer want to refer to them as ex anything. And what we decided that weekend is that we would refer to them as returning citizens. So we had 3 returning citizens with us that weekend. And somebody said to me, oh, Batool, because we can't get the film, we can't show the film, perhaps we should get these 3 brothers on stage and let them talk about, their experiences. Well, I can tell you that experience was the most, wonderful experience of the whole weekend. 3 brothers came on stage. One of them, the first one, between the 3 of them, they had served 40 years in prison. Can you imagine? These three, wonderful men had gone through such a traumatic situation that we can never even, I guess, appreciate. So they had gone through this traumatic experience. 3 men. The first one, he talked about his life, as a young Muslim Asian male growing up in the community. Dysfunctional family, father extremely severe on the children, marital relationship not great, mother being abused, children being abused, being sent off to madrasa. This was back maybe 20 years ago, 25, 30 years ago. being abused at madrasa as well. And let's face it, these things happen, and they shouldn't be swept under the carpet, and they should be acknowledged within the community and dealt with. Abused at madrasa, left madrasa, didn't want to go there in the first instance, left, so totally disillusioned with everything, totally disillusioned with the family, with the community and so on, got into difficulties, joined gangs, did something awful and ended up in prison. Spent some time in prison, began to realize his Islamic faith, began to read, had a really good chaplain in one of the prisons. In some of the other prisons he'd been in, had a dreadful time, much like what he had on the outside, abuse, racism, all sorts of, horrible instances of abuse. But actually, did meet some good people, began to realize his Islam, began to read, began to pray, fast, do all the things that a good practicing Muslim should do. And there he, came out of prison a totally different person, determined to turn his life around. Met a wonderful person, a spouse, and is now making a really good life for himself and his wife and children. Second young man, very young, had converted to Islam, became a little overzealous, began to want to implement Sharia in his own local area, was caught abusing people outside who were drinking alcohol and so on, and abusing people in the streets and shouting about Sharia law and all this sort of thing, and was caught and put in prison. And the third one, much the same as the first one, again, coming from a dysfunctional Asian family background, ended up in prison and so on. Fantastic. And to be honest, that was the best part of the entire weekend, listening to those three men, what had happened, how they became, how they were, and how they are now. And this is something that we want to encourage with our resettlement and rehabilitation. One of the projects that we're doing is with a chaplain who has established an organization called the Welcome Directory, and we were trying to encourage mosques all over the country to get involved in this so that they become a welcoming, wholesome place for converts to Islam who converted to Islam in prison, or Muslim prisoners who are re-entering into the community, so that they're welcomed, so that there's no stigma attached, that their guilt is not piled upon them, that they can offload all of that and they can walk around free of the bondage of what has happened to them and what's been their situation for the past so many years. So that's one of our projects. We have Faithful Companions. We have our national mapping exercise, where we're putting together a website of all the convert care facilities all over the country to make it easier for converts to Islam to be able to locate, help and support. Jazakallah khair. Wassalamu alaikum.